Thank you for joining iSkymaster.com. Okay, in this video, we are going to help you understand how to get Minimum OSD to work first time, in first attempt, with the PixHawk system. And I'm gonna answer pretty much every question that is out there, because I've seen all the videos on YouTube and other channels, and people really skip critical information, and it confuses people about setting it up with their PixHawks. So when you're gonna go order a Minimum OSD, the Minimum OSD comes in two different flavors in the made by Chinese manufacturers. So one is this type, okay, as you can see, it has markings for the pins, okay, and this is your transmitter and video camera in and out pins, okay, and there is a reset button on it, okay, and I'll show you what it does. And then if you flip it, there's no markings on this side because these pins are only marked at the top of the unit, and the bottom ones are also marked for video out, your power supply, and your grounding. Okay, so this is one type of Minimum OSD that when you order may come in a packet to you. Okay, and it may come with most likely this type of a cable. Okay, so on the PixHawk side is a 6-pin cable, and then you have another, how many pins are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pins on this side as well. And there's a problem with this cable, and we'll talk about it, how do you fix it. Okay, the second type of Minimum OSD is this type that you will see in the market for sale. So this pin configuration is the same, as you can see that, okay, video in, video out, 12-volt ground, okay, and I will explain how that works. And then it has a different style of pins sticking out on this side compared to the old one that I showed you, okay, and there's a slight difference. So the difference is, on this one they're saying the last pin is ground, then the second pin is TX, then RX, 5-volt ground, and black from bottom up. Now on the old one, if you carefully look at the markings, and I don't know if you can read it, you can notice that the last pin is not marked at all. Then it says the second pin, it says ground, then it says +5, RX and TX, and then the last pin is not marked. So why is that? Well, the old Minimum OSDs, there's a manufacturing default. The ground pin is not the second pin, the ground pin is this pin, the first pin, okay? And even when they give you the cable to program it, the cable is actually pinned incorrectly. So I have corrected a cable where I moved, if you have received this type of a cable, if you notice, I have moved the ground pin from the second pin to the first pin. And the way you do it is by lifting this plastic tab and simply pulling the wire. Okay, you just lift this tab a little bit, slightly, don't do it too much, else it's gonna break. And you pull the wire out, and then you push this wire back in here, and it's gonna lock itself. Okay, so that's the right cable for the old Minimum OSD, and it goes something like this. Flip side, okay, the pin's exposed, and then you plug that from pin 1 to the last pin. Now here's the difference, right? So now look at the difference between the two. Let's see if I can zoom it and you can see the difference, right? So if you notice, the new ones, the ground pin is the first one, but in the old one is saying ground pin is the second pin, which is incorrect. But the third pin on the old one is correct, it is +5-volt. But on the new one, the second pin is TX, then RX, then 5 volt, then ground, and then blank. So you cannot use one cable with the other or vice versa, so you have to make sure that you have the right cables for Minimum OSD to begin with. So to program Minimum OSD, here's what you need to do. So I'm going to first focus on the older version of the Minimum OSD, which is this one, okay, with the wrong grounding marking and has a reset button and so on. And I'm going to walk you through with how you actually first program it. And what does programming means here? Well, it comes with default settings, but you want to make sure that you're checking those default settings if they are appropriate to the type of aircraft you will be using with this Minimum OSD. So if you're flying a fixed wing plane, you may want to change the settings for fixed wing, or if you're flying a quadcopter, then you want to make the changes for the quadcopter. So step one, take a screenshot of this one pager, just like my other videos, okay, and print it out. It will come handy for how you actually wire the Minimum OSD with your laptop. Okay, so that is your step one to configure the Minimum OSD. So this is the pinning, wiring, and some of the instructions, and I'm going to show you how I connect my USB to TTL converter with the Minimum OSD. Alright, so if you've seen my previous video about USB to TTL converters, I'm not going to repeat it. You can watch it, and you should have a USB to TTL converter like this one. Okay, this one has 6 pins. Remember, I talked about it in the previous video. This one I think is called the FTDI232. Costs like few bucks off eBay. Okay, so to connect it, this is the old OSD, Minimum OSD. Now notice how I have wired. So the pin which is not marked, okay, I do have a wire connected. So that wire is the OSD. I'm just calling it OSD pin above TX, which is basically this pinning right here. This is how I pinned it, okay? So then the RX goes to RX. RX goes to TX on the Minimum OSD. Then the TX from your US TTL converter goes into RX. Then you have plus 5 volt, and notice the one which is marked as ground is actually not ground. I skipped that one and I connected it to the last pin, which is actually the ground. Alright, so for initial programming, that's all you need. Again, one more time, take a screenshot of this one pager and print it out, and keep it as a cheat sheet for future reference. Okay, now we're going to take the USB cable and we're going to plug it into a laptop. Alright, so you can see the lights are coming on. Okay, so that means the OSD is powered up and it's ready for programming. So let's go to the laptop, and we're gonna run, and sorry if I'm being out of focus and stuff, but we're gonna run what is called the Minimum OSD Extra Config tool, which is this one, 2.4.0.0. Okay, this is the one I got it downloaded from the internet, and I can provide the link at the bottom of the video where to go and download the software. So you run the software, and the first time when you run the software, you are going to go to the config tab. Okay, and the first thing you do is that you come down here. Okay, you select your COM port. So in my case it's COM9. In your case it could be whatever, right? You select COM9, you click read from OSD, and you will get this message that the EEPROM mapping is outdated and automatic update will start. So you click OK. And it's saying done writing configuration data. Now you may not get this message that the EEPROM is outdated, okay, because depends how old is the minimum OSD you bought it, bought it like years ago, just bought it. So these Chinese manufacturers, they don't give you any information when you buy these products, and that's what confuses people. All right, so we're gonna click OK, and it's saying EEPROM mapping updated. All right, so perfect. So we got that, and we can again say read from OSD. And when you click read on OSD, I'll show you one more time. Watch, the blue light is gonna blink. I'm gonna click on read from OSD. Alright. Well, it didn't blink this time, but that's fine. So these are the parameters that we have in the configuration. So this is how I set, okay? I set this for Mavlink RSSI because I do want RSSI information to come back, and I'm setting my RSSI minimum value to 0, maximum to 2.5. Warning level, they're saying 5%. I think that's pretty dangerous, because if you're flying at fast speed, 5% mean in less than 5 seconds, you will be your RSSI signal may die. So I would change this to like 15%, just to be on the safe side. Okay, so you will start to get warnings on your screen. And then the next thing is warning auto panel switch. So how do you enable or disable the warnings to display on your screen or not? So I would go, either you can use panel 1 or panel 2. I normally just use the panel 1 because that's what I'm doing. Okay, so I'll show you which panel we're going to program. So you're going to use panel 1. Now, OSD toggle channel. Yeah, this is what allows you to toggle if you want OSD to be on or off. So you, through your transmitter, you can actually control the OSD. Okay, so I'm gonna set this to mode switch because I like my mode switch to be allowed to turn it on and off. Okay, the next option is called stall speed. Okay, so if you're flying a fixed wing airplane, do you want any kind of a warning if you're flying it too slow and you don't want your plane to stall? So that's what it is about. The next one is overspeed. Again, it's up to you if you want to enable this or not. Right now the default is set for 54 miles per hour, which is pretty fast, okay, for most planes. Call sign. Call sign is what do you want your airplane, some people put down their plane names, their names, whatever. So if your name is John, you can say John. All right. Next, OSD brightness. How bright do you want the OSD data to overlay on top of your video stream? Okay, so do you want it to be medium, high? I think medium is pretty good, so I would just leave it at medium. Okay. Units. Some people like imperial, some people like metric. I preferred imperial, so I'm going to put it in imperial. This is the most critical piece. Now, when do you want warnings to start flashing on your OSD screen, on your goggles? when the battery reaches a certain threshold. Now this is a topic that I am still investigating, but for a 3S battery, which is normally operating at 11.1 volt, I would probably set this to 10.5 or 10.1 or 10.8, depends, whatever you feel comfortable that you want your plane to come back and land, or you want to land it before the battery totally runs out of capacity. Okay, so I'm going to set this to 10.5 in my case. Percentage wise, I prefer 20% because that gives me enough time to bring the plane back for landing. Okay, and then you want to enable show sign before value, airspeed. Basically, if you want labels, and I'll show you what that means, but for the time being, just check all those. Once you configure this tab, you again go down and you click on save current to. Okay, you will get this message. Say yes, and it's done writing the data to your minimum OSD. All right, now next step, you go to panel 1. Why are we going to panel 1? Because we have selected panel 1 layout to be displayed inside the goggles. Okay, so you're going to go to panel 1. Now by default, you will see every box is checked. All right, so the best way to learn this is by unchecking everything first, so you can see how the screen will look like without nothing being displayed. Okay, so I'm unchecking everything. All right, so you can see now the screen is clean. That means when you're going to be watching the video, this is how the video is going to look like if you have no boxes checked. So what information is critical to be displayed? Now, everybody has their own preferences, but my preferences are as follows. This is what I like to see. Okay, I want to see airspeed. I do want to know what my altitude is, so it appears here. I do want to know what my battery capacity looks like, so this is where the battery is going to come. Battery percentage will come here. Okay, so how much percentage of battery you left. Remember call sign, we put John. John showed up here at the upper top. Right, so it's up to you if you want that. I normally don't put it. Do we want to know the current left? Yes, absolutely. Now as far as efficiency goes, I don't know, I don't select it. Flight mode, absolutely, because I want to know if I'm in autopilot, manual mode, or whatever mode I'm flying my aircraft in. So you want to select that. You do want your GPS coordinates, absolutely. That's how you know where your plane crashed or something happened, God forbids. Okay, this is again personal preference. Next one, heading. So this is the heading. If you notice, it's appearing here, right here, where my mouse is. Okay, this is telling you the actual heading of the airplane, not like a waypoint heading. Okay, so up to you to enable it or not. Heading knows I do not, Rose, I do not enable it normally. Home altitude, again, I think it's not critical. Who cares? So I won't check that. Home direction is very important because you want to know where you're standing versus where your plane is, right? So you want to select home heading, direction. Next one, home distance is also important. How far you are from where you took off, okay? Horizon is good because that tells you the level of the plane. Pitch, I do not select. Real heading is this, okay? So now we have two types of headings. Remember, we have heading and real heading, okay? So that tells you the real heading of the plane versus where you thought the plane is heading. Roll, I don't select because unless you're like flipping around, which is good for quads and stuff. So I don't do that. RSSI, yes, I do want to know what my RSSI looks like, so I know how good the signal is. Again, if you have a temperature sensor, you can collect it. If not, not. Throttle speed sometimes is good. Time is important, right? You want to know how far you have been flying. Trip distance, again, it's up to you. Velocity, I don't care normally. Vertical speed, I don't care. Visible satellites, absolutely. You want to know how many satellites, it's right here. Your GPS has locked, because if you start to lose satellites, good idea to bring the plane back. Okay, wind speed, again, if you have a sensor or not, you want to put that in. And this I don't. So these are the parameters I do. And I'm again gonna go and I'm gonna click on save to current tab. Okay, and again you get this message. So this is what you're going to see now on your screen when you connect this Minimum OSD with the PixHawk. Please note, one thing I did not mention, if you go back to config, this is where you select the type of aircraft, okay, plane or copter. So I am right now programming this for a plane. Okay, we do this again, save to current tab, you get this message, save it, and we're done with this part of the training. So we program the Minimum OSD through the laptop, right? This is the configuration we have. And now the next step is unplug this thing. So I'm going to unplug the USB cable that powers down the Minimum OSD. I'm going to unplug all the cables. Not easy to do with one hand, but we'll try. All right, we unplugged it. So now, how do we actually plug this thing with the PixHawk? All right, so here, I'm gonna flip this page. Here's your circuit diagram for PixHawk. Okay, please, again, take a screenshot of this diagram and print it out. All right. Okay, and I'm going to walk you through with this diagram how we are plugging this thing with the PixHawk. So here's our PixHawk, right, facing this way, just like the diagram shows, and you're using this special cable. Okay, I don't know if you got this one with yours or not, or you can order it from eBay. And remember one thing that I mentioned, that the grounding cable, when you buy this cable from eBay, this cable, this wire is actually connected here. Okay, and I can show you the wrong one. So here's the wrong one. Okay, this is how I got it from eBay, that the ground wire is actually here instead of over here. So you have to move it, and the way you move it, you simply lift this plastic tab here. Okay, just lift it a little bit, pull the wire, will come out, and then you just slide back it in here. All right, so this is the right cable. And what do we want to do? We want to plug this thing in to this guy over here. Okay, so let me plug it in. All right, so let me walk you through with this diagram. Okay, so we have one cable connected to Minimum OSD. Okay, and use the special cable, which is like a 6-wire cable, connects to telemetry port 2. So this goes to telemetry port number 2, not 1. Okay, and then as far as the transmitter and video goes, okay, now let's look at on this side. Okay, so I am gonna face it this way. So the pins are pointing upwards towards, upper right hand corner, and this will match with the diagram I'm showing you. So the camera will go to the top and the transmitter will go to the bottom. Okay, So let me plug that in and then I'll show you. All right, so I'm using this 12 volt camera. Okay, so now keep in mind that the voltage that is coming out is going to be 12 volt. At least that's what my understanding is from this side. So your camera has to be a 12 volt camera, but you can use a voltmeter to measure it once you have everything plugged in. If it's less than 12 volts, or then you can use like a U-back or something to drop the voltage down to 5 volts and so on. And then I have a TX832 transmitter plugged into this side. Okay, and the transmitter power is going just like the diagram. Okay, it's just going to a battery, which is a 3S battery, LiPo battery. Okay, and I just put in an on-off switch so I can control the transmitter on and off. Okay, so when you don't have the minimum OSD connected to any PixHawk, and if you have only wired that many wires so far, and if you power it up, notice what happens on the minimum OSD. No lights are on. Okay, and why is it? You will notice in a second. Okay, so next step, we're gonna connect this to a PixHawk. So for PixHawk, what I'm doing is using a very simple setup. Same battery which is powering the transmitter. Let me turn off the transmitter for a second. I just use a split power cable and I'm connected to the PixHawk power distribution board, and I connected the wires to the PixHawk power port. Okay, I only have you don't even need this switch, and then I have a buzzer. Okay, then I am going to take the minimum OSD cable. This is the minimum OSD cable. Okay, and the grounding goes to the far right as per the diagram. Okay, so let me plug this in. All right, the cable is plugged in. Notice, okay, you want the connector to be inserted properly. Okay, don't ever try to pull these connectors out by pulling the wires. You're just going to destroy this cable. Always use the edges, some kind of a tweezer or something, to lift one side, then the other side, then the other side till it comes out. Okay, that's the proper way to do it. So my next step, I'm going to power up. It doesn't matter which sequence you do it. All right, I'm going to power up the PixHawk, and notice the minimum OSD light came on this side, only one side, and PixHawk is powering up. Okay, now if I turn on my camera and the transmitter, notice on the minimum OSD what happens. Another light comes on. So now you have a complete circuit. That tells you that the minimum OSD is getting power from the camera side, as well as the power from the PixHawk. So at this point, whatever is being viewed inside this camera has been transmitted through this transmitter, okay, to your goggles. So let me see if I can show you how it's looking inside the goggle. Hold on. Okay, so I turn on, this is my DJI goggles, but you can see the minimum OSD data is being displayed. Okay, hopefully you can see it, but I know it's very difficult to focus into the goggle like that. And that's it. Alright, so this video covered the old minimum USD, or maybe it's still being sold in the market, I don't know, how to configure, program, and use it with your PixHawk. Now guys, if you have received this one, it's exactly the same process. The only thing you have to do is to make a cable that matches the wiring diagram properly, okay? Because notice the cable we used before with the PixHawk, and even for USB to TTL converter programming, the pin configuration on the old OSD is different than the new one. Okay, so one more time, here's the diagram. Let me move these things out of the way. So here's your, take a screenshot. Okay, hopefully you got it. That's your USB to TTL programming, and this is your one-pager wiring to the PixHawk. Just remember this part I mentioned, that I'm using a 12-volt camera. Use a voltmeter to measure if it's 12 volts coming out of here or lower, because if it's 12 volts and if your camera is a 5 volt, you're going to blow up the camera. Okay, so then you need to make sure that you use like a step down back to drop 12 volt down to 5 volt if you're using a 5 volt camera or 3 volt camera or any other type of a camera. Okay, hopefully this helps. Thank you for visiting iSkyMaster. Bye bye.